The alarm echoed through the Galactic Council chamber like a death scream. Premier Veltaris, a being made of living crystal, watched the holographic display with growing horror. 3 ships had just crossed the quarantine barrier around Sol system. Ships that should not exist. For 10,000 cycles, the barrier had stood silent. No one went in. Nothing came out. The ancient race called the Architects had built it so long ago that most species had forgotten why. Some said it contained a failed experiment. Others believed it held extinct creatures. But everyone agreed on one thing. The barrier was never meant to be crossed. Now something had broken free. Captain Taiyang stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, watching stars that his ancestors had only dreamed about. Behind him, Commander Gina worked at her station, monitoring the alien signals flooding their communication systems. They had spent 200 years preparing for this moment. 2 centuries of building, learning, and growing stronger. Captain were receiving thousands of transmissions, Gina said, her voice calm despite the historic moment. Most of them sound like warnings. A few are asking us to identify ourselves. Taiyang smiled slightly. Let's not keep them waiting. Open a channel. On the other side of the barrier, Ambassador Yuna stood in the diplomatic vessel Spirit of Earth. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Every word mattered. Every gesture would be analyzed by beings she had never met. She took a deep breath and began recording. To the civilizations beyond our world, we are humanity. We come from Earth, the 3rd planet of Sol system. For 50,000 years, we lived behind a barrier we did not build. 200 years ago, we discovered it. We studied it. We learned from it. And today we cross it. We seek dialogue, not conflict. We have waited long enough. The message transmitted across known space at faster than light speeds. Within hours, every major civilization received it. Within a day, panic spread like wildfire. Veltaris called an emergency session. The council chamber filled with representatives from 100 worlds. Some walked on legs. Others floated in special environments. A few existed only as energy patterns. All of them shared one emotion: fear. How is this possible? Demanded Councillor Thexarn, his feathers ruffling in agitation. His species, the Draxians, had military might that made empires tremble. But even he felt uncertain now. The Architects built that barrier to last forever. Nothing should be able to cross it. Perhaps nothing couldn't cross it from the outside, suggested another councillor quietly. But what about from the inside? The chamber fell silent. That was the terrifying thought no one wanted to voice. The Architects hadn't built the barrier to keep something in. They had built it to keep everyone else out while whatever was inside evolved. Dr. Day had spent 5 years studying the barrier technology before Earth's ships crossed it. He was aboard the Horizon's Promise now, reviewing data that made his hands shake. The barrier hadn't failed. It hadn't been destroyed. The human ships had simply adapted their engines to pass through it like it wasn't there. Captain, Day said, approaching Taiyang, I've been analyzing the barrier's code. There's something you need to see. He pulled up a holographic display showing ancient text. The translation software had finally cracked the architect language after years of work. What it revealed made both men go quiet. Species designation, Homo sapiens. Threat level, undefined. Recommendation, isolation and observation. Reason, unprecedented adaptive capability. They turn every obstacle into opportunity. They weaponize curiosity itself. Suggested containment period, until extinction or evolution renders them compatible with galactic society. They were afraid of us even 50,000 years ago, Taiyang said slowly. Before we had fire, before we had tools. They saw our potential, Day replied, and it terrified them. The council's emergency session continued for 3 days. Some representatives wanted to immediately reinstate the quarantine by force. Others argued for caution. A few, very few, suggested opening dialogue. We cannot allow this, Thexarn declared. The Architects were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. If they feared these humans enough to quarantine them, we should too. The Architects also destroyed themselves in a civil war, Veltaris countered. Perhaps fear was their weakness, not their wisdom. Then let me share some fact, said another counselor, pulling up data from long-range scans. These humans have colonized every planet and moon in their solar system. Their population is 50 billion. They have fusion technology, quantum computing, and artificial gravity, all developed while trapped inside a quarantine zone with no outside contact. The numbers appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled representatives. "That's impossible," someone said. "No species develops that fast in isolation." "These ones did," Veltaris said grimly. Yuna's vessel approached the neutral station Kep 7, where the Council had agreed to meet. She wasn't alone. Admiral Minho commanded a fleet of Earth's defensive ships, holding position just outside the station's sensor range. Not a threat, but a promise. Humanity would talk, but they wouldn't be pushed around. As Yuna prepared to dock, she reviewed everything humanity knew about galactic civilization. It wasn't much. Most of it had been pieced together from studying the barrier technology and intercepting stray transmissions that leaked through over the years. They knew there was a council. They knew there were multiple species. They knew space was full of life, but they didn't know how that life would react to them. The docking process completed smoothly. Yuna stepped into the station's reception area, and for the first time in human history, she stood face to face with alien life. Veltaris towered over her, his crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. Beside him stood Thexarn, whose predatory eyes tracked her every movement. A dozen other species filled the room, each more bizarre than the last. "Ambassador Yuna of Earth," Veltaris said, his voice resonating through a translation device. "Welcome to Kep 7, we have much to discuss." "Thank you, Premier," Yuna replied, keeping her voice steady. "Humanity is honored to finally meet our galactic neighbors." "Neighbors," Thexarn repeated, the word sounding dangerous in his mouth. "That remains to be determined. First, you must answer one question. Why did you leave the quarantine zone?" Yuna met his gaze without flinching. "Because we outgrew it. Because 50,000 years of isolation is enough. Because we deserve a place among the stars, just like you. And if we disagree," Thexarn challenged, "then you'll have to explain why you think it's acceptable to imprison an entire species for crimes they never committed." Yuna said calmly, "We're not leaving. We're not going back. We're here to stay. The only choice you have is whether we do this as friends or as something else." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush worlds. Finally, Veltaris spoke. "Then let us begin these discussions. For all our sakes, I hope wisdom prevails over fear." But as the first formal contact session began, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Something was approaching. Something that didn't identify itself. Something that saw humanity's emergence as an opportunity. The Draxian Empire's war fleet had just entered the sector, and they weren't coming to talk. The war fleet appeared on every screen in the station. 40 massive ships, each bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Minho saw them first from his position beyond the sensor grid. He had been a soldier for 30 years, and he recognized a predator when he saw one. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered quietly. "Do not fire unless fired upon, but be ready." On Kep 7 station, chaos erupted in the council chamber. Representatives shouted in a dozen languages. Some demanded evacuation. Others wanted to know why the Draxian Empire had brought a war fleet to a peace conference. Thexarn's face showed no surprise. If anything, he looked satisfied. "This is not my doing," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "The Empire acts independently of the Council. But perhaps they have the right idea. Testing these humans before we decide their fate." Yuna felt her heart racing but kept her expression calm. This was exactly the kind of situation humanity had prepared for. 200 years of knowing they would eventually face stronger, more advanced civilizations. 200 years of learning to adapt and survive. "Premier Veltaris," she said clearly, "I request permission to contact my fleet." Granted, the crystalline being replied immediately. "Though I warn you, engaging the Draxian Empire would be suicide. They have conquered 17 star systems. We don't plan to engage them," Yuna said. "We plan to talk to them first." Before anyone could respond, a holographic image materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a massive reptilian creature covered in battle scars. Warlord Krex, leader of the Draxian military, stared at the assembled counselors with undisguised contempt. "Council," he growled, "you waste time with words. I have come to test these humans myself. If they are as dangerous as the architects feared, they should prove it. If they are weak, they will return to their quarantine or be destroyed." "You have no authority here," Veltaris said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Authority?" Krex laughed. "I have 40 warships. That is all the authority I need. Humans, you have 1 hour to show me what you can do. Fight or surrender. Choose now. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted again. But Una was already moving, heading toward the communication center with Veltaris close behind. You can't possibly fight them, the Premier said urgently. Please, Ambassador, don't throw away your species' future on pride. We're not fighting out of pride, Una replied. We're fighting because that warlord just declared war on humanity. And we don't surrender. She activated a secure channel to Admiral Minho. His face appeared, calm and focused. I saw it, he said before she could speak. Recommendations? Show them what we can do, Una said. But try not to start a larger war if we can avoid it. Minho smiled grimly. Understood. Gina's already working on it. Commander Gina stood at the tactical display aboard the Horizon's Promise, studying the Draxian formation. Captain Taeyang watched over her shoulder as she worked through the problem like a puzzle. They're overconfident, she said finally. Look at their spacing. They think we'll either run or fight head-on. They're not ready for anything creative. What did you have in mind? Taeyang asked. Something very human, Gina replied with a slight smile. The hour passed quickly. When it ended, the Draxian fleet began moving toward the human ships. 40 warships against humanity's 12 vessels. On paper, it wasn't even a fair fight. Warlord Krex watched from his command ship, expecting to see the humans either flee or form a defensive position. Instead, they scattered in 12 different directions, each ship moving independently at speeds that made his tactical officers curse in surprise. What are they doing? Krex demanded. Unknown, Warlord, his chief officer replied. Their movements appear random. No formation, no coordination. Then they're fools, Krex said. Destroy them. But destroying them proved harder than expected. The human ships moved erratically, never where targeting systems predicted. They used the debris field from nearby asteroid mining as cover. They employed tactics that made no logical sense. And slowly, carefully, they were separating the Draxian fleet. Lieutenant Bora flew her fighter with instincts honed in Earth's asteroid belts. She had grown up racing through the rings of Saturn, where one mistake meant death. This was just another race, except the obstacles shot back. A Draxian cruiser locked onto her fighter. Missile launch detected. Bora didn't try to outrun it. Instead, she flew straight toward a cluster of mining debris, weaving between chunks of rock and metal. The missile followed, its targeting system unable to distinguish between her ship and the 100 other objects around her. At the last second, Bora cut her engines and flipped her fighter, firing her positioning thrusters to spin around a massive asteroid. The missile, unable to turn as sharply, slammed into the rock and exploded. Splash 1, she reported calmly, rejoining the engagement. Across the battlefield, 11 other human pilots were doing similar things. They fought like they had learned in Earth's harsh solar system, where every resource was precious and every mistake was punished. They didn't fight like soldiers following orders. They fought like individuals who trusted each other to improvise. The Draxians had never seen anything like it. They're not following any tactical doctrine, Krex's officer reported, frustration clear in his voice. We can't predict their movements. They're acting independently, but somehow still coordinating. On the Horizon's Promise, Gina watched the battle unfold exactly as she had planned. Human military strategy didn't rely on rigid formations or predictable patterns. It relied on chaos, creativity, and the individual skill of every pilot and captain. Phase 2, she ordered. Target their command ship's communication arrays. Engineer Jinwoo had designed a special weapon for this moment. Not a bomb or a laser, but something more elegant. A directed electromagnetic pulse that could disable specific systems without destroying the ship. It was the kind of weapon only humans would think of, because they had spent centuries dealing with equipment failures on hostile worlds where you couldn't just replace everything. You learned to disable, repair, and repurpose. Even in combat, 3 human ships synchronized their attack perfectly, hitting the Draxian command vessel from different angles. The pulses weren't strong enough to damage the ship, but they fried every external communication system. Suddenly, Warlord Krex couldn't talk to his fleet. Without coordination, the Draxian ships fell into confusion. They had been trained to follow orders, to maintain formation, to fight as a unit. When those orders stopped coming, they hesitated. The human ships didn't hesitate. They pressed their advantage, not by destroying ships, but by systematically disabling weapon systems, engines, and sensors. One by one, the Draxian vessels found themselves floating helplessly in space, alive but neutralized. It took 40 minutes. 12 human ships had disabled 40 Draxian warships without destroying a single one. On Kep-7 station, the counselors watched in stunned silence. Even Thexarn seemed at a loss for words. How? Someone finally asked. Dr. Hanna, the xenobiologist who had come with Yuna, spoke up. May I explain? Veltaris gestured for her to continue. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme environmental variation, Hanna said. Ice ages, volcanic periods, asteroid impacts. Our species survived 5 major extinction events. We didn't survive because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we adapt. We improvise. We solve problems in ways no one expects. She pulled up data showing Earth's violent geological history. Every challenge became a lesson. Every disaster became a teacher. For millions of years, our world tried to kill us. We learned not just to survive, but to thrive. That's what you just saw. Humans turning a disadvantage into victory through pure adaptation. And the architects saw this potential 50,000 years ago, Dr. Day added, stepping forward with his decoded files. I finished translating their records. They didn't quarantine humanity because we were violent. They quarantined us because we were too good at solving problems. They ran simulations showing that if humanity reached space, we would eventually surpass every other civilization. He displayed the architect records for everyone to see. They weren't afraid of what we were. They were afraid of what we would become. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Veltaris spoke. The question remains, what do we do now? The humans have proven they can fight, but can they coexist peacefully? Before anyone could answer, a new transmission came through. It was Admiral Minho. Counselors, we've disabled the Draxian fleet but caused no casualties. Their crews are safe. We're transmitting repair instructions to help them fix their ships. We didn't come here to make enemies, but we won't be victims either. The choice of what happens next belongs to you. Warlord Krex's voice suddenly cut through, his communication system apparently restored. Humans, he said, and there was something new in his tone. Respect, perhaps, or fear. You have proven yourselves. I withdraw my challenge. As the Draxian fleet began limping away, the council members looked at each other with new understanding. Humanity wasn't just dangerous. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, and the architect's quarantine had only made them stronger. 3 weeks passed since the battle with the Draxian fleet. The Galactic Council remained divided. Half wanted to welcome humanity. The other half wanted to push them back into quarantine by any means necessary. The debate raged endlessly while humanity waited patiently at the edge of known space. Ambassador Quan arrived on Kep-7 station with a different mission than military victory. He carried no weapons, commanded no ships. Instead, he brought something the Council had never asked for but desperately needed: understanding. His first meeting was with a nervous counselor named Shimtar, whose species communicated through bioluminescent patterns. Quan had spent 2 weeks learning their visual language just to have this conversation. Why do you try so hard? Shimtar asked, his body flickering with confused colors. You won your battle. You proved your strength. Why seek our friendship now? Because strength without friendship is just loneliness, Quan replied, his translator carefully conveying his meaning. We didn't spend 50,000 years isolated just to be alone among the stars. He showed Shimtar recordings of human music, art, and stories. At first, the counselor found them disturbing. Human entertainment was filled with conflict, struggle, and overcoming impossible odds. Their heroes were scarred and broken. Their victories came at great cost. Your stories celebrate suffering, Shimtar observed. We celebrate overcoming suffering, Quan corrected gently. There's a difference. We don't love pain. We love the strength we find within ourselves when facing it. Slowly, carefully, Quan began building bridges. Not through military might or political pressure, but through the simple act of helping others understand humanity's perspective. Dr. Ariam, a human psychologist, worked alongside him. She had spent years studying the architect records, trying to understand why advanced civilizations feared humanity so deeply. Her conclusion surprised even herself. They're not afraid of our violence, she explained to a gathering of interested counselors. Most species have violence in their history. They're afraid of our optimism. The assembled aliens looked confused. Think about it, Ariam continued. When you face an impossible problem, what do? Most species accept their limitations. They work within their boundaries. Humans don't do that. We see an impossible problem and we think, how can I make this possible? We never accept that something can't be done. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. She pulled up human history, showing ancient civilizations declaring they would fly like birds, dive to the ocean depths, and reach the moon, things that seemed impossible until humans made them real. This mindset is terrifying to species who have already accepted their place in the universe. Because if humans never accept limits, where do we stop? One counselor, a floating gas-based life form, asked the question everyone was thinking. Where do you stop? We don't know, Ariam admitted honestly. But we hope you'll be there with us when we find out. While diplomats worked on understanding, Captain Nari was exploring. Her ship, the Far Sight, had been investigating the space beyond the quarantine zone, looking for answers about the architects. What she found changed everything. The ruins floated in dead space far from any star. Ancient structures that had once been magnificent cities now cold and lifeless. Nari's crew carefully examined them, and what they discovered made her immediately contact Admiral Minho. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, transmitting the data. "The architects didn't just disappear. They destroyed themselves, and I think I know why." Professor Junho, a historian specializing in ancient civilizations, reviewed the data with growing excitement and horror. The architect ruins contained records of a massive civil war that had consumed their entire species. The war had been about humanity. Half of the architects believed humans should be destroyed before they became a threat. The other half believed humanity represented something new and valuable. The debate had turned violent, then catastrophic. In the end, the architects had wiped themselves out, leaving only automated systems like the quarantine barrier. They were so afraid of our potential that they killed each other over it, Junho said quietly, and in doing so, they proved their fear was based on their own limitations, not ours. He shared these findings with the Council. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society. The great architects, the civilization that every species looked up to, had destroyed themselves over a philosophical disagreement about primitives who hadn't even discovered fire yet. Veltaris studied the data carefully. If the architects couldn't agree on what to do about humanity, how can we? Perhaps that's the wrong question, suggested a counselor who had been quiet until now. Perhaps the question is whether we're going to make the same mistake they did. The debates intensified. Some counselors argued that the architects' fear had been justified, and their self-destruction proved how dangerous the human question was. Others argued that the architects' failure proved that fear was the real danger, not humanity itself. Then something unexpected happened. A strange signal began broadcasting from deep within the ruins Nari had discovered. It was old, ancient beyond measure, but it was still active, and it was asking for Captain Taiyang specifically. Taiyang traveled to the ruins with a small crew, including Dr. Day and Yuna. They found a massive structure at the heart of the dead city, still powered by technology humans couldn't fully understand. Inside, they discovered an artificial intelligence, a remnant of the architect civilization. "I have waited 50,000 of your years," the AI said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "The architects created me to observe humanity's development and make a final determination about your species." "A determination?" Yuna asked carefully. "Whether you have evolved wisdom alongside your capability," the AI explained. "The architects feared that humans would become powerful without becoming wise. They feared you would make the same mistakes they did." "And what have you determined?" Taiyang asked. "I cannot determine this alone," the AI replied. "I require a test. One final measurement of humanity's character." Before anyone could ask what test, alarms began blaring across galactic space. A plague had appeared simultaneously on 17 Council worlds. It spread rapidly, killing thousands within days. The medical technology of every affected species proved useless against it. Panic spread faster than the disease. On Earth, Dr. Day received the plague data and immediately began analysis. His team worked around the clock, studying the pathogen from every angle. What they discovered was both impressive and terrifying. "This isn't natural," he reported to Admiral Minho. "It's engineered, very precisely engineered, almost like someone designed it specifically to be curable by human medical technology." The test, Minho said quietly. What? The AI said it needed a test. This is it, can we cure it? Day looked at his data. Yes, but it will take time, and we'll need to send medical teams to every infected world. Then we send them, Minho decided immediately. But not everyone on Earth agreed. Some leaders argued that humanity should use this as leverage. The Council had been debating whether to accept humans for weeks. Now they needed humanity's help. Why not demand concessions in return? Admiral Minho addressed Earth's government directly. Because that's not who we are, he said firmly. The architects feared we would become powerful without wisdom. They feared we would use our strength to dominate rather than help. If we prove them right now, we deserve their fear. If we prove them wrong, we earn our place among the stars. The vote was close, but ultimately humanity chose to help freely. Dr. Day led teams to 17 worlds. Dr. Hana coordinated with local medical personnel. Engineer Jinwoo adapted human medical technology to work with alien biology. They worked tirelessly, asking for nothing in return. On one world, the local population tried to pay them. Dr. Day refused. We're not merchants. We're neighbors. Neighbors help each other. On another world, a grateful leader offered humans exclusive mining rights. Hana declined politely. Keep your resources. Just remember we were here when you needed us. World by world, the plague was cured. Species that had debated whether humanity deserved to exist now watched as human doctors saved their children. Leaders who had argued for reinstating the quarantine now saw humans working alongside their own people, teaching them new medical techniques freely. When the last patient recovered, the AI's voice echoed across all council space. The test is complete. Humanity was given the power to exploit others' suffering for political gain. They chose instead to help without conditions. The architects feared you would use strength without wisdom. You have proven them wrong. The AI paused, and when it spoke again, there was something like pride in its synthesized voice. The quarantine is officially ended. Humanity has earned its place among the stars, not through conquest or threats, but through the simple choice to help when help was needed. The architects would have been proud to be wrong about you. In the council chamber, Veltaris stood and looked at Yuna. Ambassador, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally welcome humanity to galactic society. We have much to learn from each other. Thexarn, who had opposed humanity from the start, surprised everyone by speaking up. The Draxians also welcome you. You defeated our fleet with honor and cured our sick without hesitation. We were wrong about you. The formal acceptance of humanity into galactic society should have been a moment of pure celebration. Instead, it marked the beginning of humanity's real education about the universe they had joined. Ambassador Yuna discovered this during her first official council session as a full member. The chamber buzzed with discussions about trade routes, territorial disputes, and resource allocation. Everything seemed ordinary until an old counselor named Veshkan mentioned something casually. Of course, we must avoid the dead zones in Sector 7. Nothing goes there anymore. Dead zones? Yuna asked. The chamber went quiet. Counselors exchanged uncomfortable looks. There are places in the galaxy where civilizations used to exist, Veltaris explained carefully. Now there's nothing. Just empty space and ruins. We don't know what happened to them. We don't talk about it much. How many places? Yuna pressed. 43 verified locations, Veltaris admitted. Possibly more. The architects explored farther than we have. They left warnings about some regions, but we lost most of their records. This information troubled Yuna deeply. She contacted Captain Taeyang immediately. We need to investigate these dead zones, she said. If there's something out there destroying civilizations, we need to know about it. Taeyang agreed. The Horizon's Promise was already scheduled for exploration missions. He simply changed the destination. Meanwhile, on a council world called Velshara, Ambassador Quan continued his work of cultural exchange. He had established programs where humans and aliens could learn from each other. The results were fascinating and sometimes surprising. A group of young aliens attended a human university via holographic link. They learned about Earth's history, its art, and its philosophy. One student, fascinated by human literature, asked a question that stumped her professor. Why do humans write so many stories about bad things? Wars, disasters, conflicts? The professor thought carefully. Because those are the moments when humans reveal their true character. Anyone can be good when life is easy, Humans are interested in what people become when life is hard. This concept was alien to most galactic species. Their stories celebrated harmony, cooperation, and stability. Human stories celebrated struggle, growth, and change. It made them uncomfortable and intrigued them in equal measure. Dr. Ariam studied this cultural gap extensively. She published a paper that became required reading for anyone working with humans. Understanding Human Narrative: Why Humans Tell Stories About Problems. In it, she explained that humans didn't glorify suffering, they glorified overcoming it. Every human culture, across all of Earth's history, shared stories of heroes who faced impossible odds and found ways to win. Not because they were strongest or smartest, but because they refused to give up. This is humanity's real power, she wrote. Not our technology or our tactics, but our stubborn refusal to accept defeat. We face extinction and say, not today. We face impossible problems and say, not impossible, just difficult. This mindset scares species who have learned their limitations, because humans never learn theirs. The paper caused heated debates across council worlds. Some found it inspiring. Others found it terrifying. A few found it both. Captain Nari reached the first dead zone 3 months after humanity's acceptance. Her instruments detected faint energy signatures from planetary ruins. She approached cautiously, aware that whatever had destroyed this civilization might still be present. What she found was haunting. Cities that had once held billions now stood empty. Technology far beyond anything the current council possessed lay dormant and decaying. There were no bodies, no signs of war, no obvious cause of death. It's like everyone just disappeared, her science officer reported. Nari explored 3 more dead zones. Each told the same story. Advanced civilizations thriving one moment, gone the next. The mystery deepened with each discovery. Then she found something different. A station still transmitting a signal, weak but steady. Inside, she discovered another architect AI, damaged but functional. Warning, it said immediately upon activation. The collector's approach. Evacuation protocols failed. Civilization lost. Warning repeats. What are collectors? Nari asked urgently. The AI's response was fragmented. Extragalactic force. Harvest advanced civilizations. Take technology. Leave nothing. The architects calculated their arrival. 60,000 years until they reached this galaxy. They are coming. Nari felt her blood run cold. When was this message recorded? 52,317 years ago, which meant the collectors were less than 8,000 years away now. Perhaps less. She transmitted her findings immediately to Earth and the Council. The response was chaos. Emergency sessions convened. Scientists verified Nari's data. Historians searched through every scrap of architect records they could find. Slowly, a picture emerged of a threat the architects had discovered but never defeated. The collectors were not a civilization. They were a force, ancient beyond measure, that traveled between galaxies harvesting advanced technology. When they arrived in a galaxy, they identified the most advanced species and took everything of value. The civilization disappeared. The technology vanished. Only ruins remained. The architects discovered them through long-range probes, Professor Junho explained to the assembled council. They knew the collectors would arrive eventually. That's why they advanced so rapidly. They were trying to find a way to fight or hide from this threat. And they failed, someone said quietly. They never got the chance to try, Junho corrected. They destroyed themselves in civil war before the collectors arrived. Over humanity of all things, the irony was bitter. The architects had spent so much energy fearing what humans might become that they never prepared for the real threat. And now that threat was approaching and the galaxy was unprepared. Veltaris called for calm. We have thousands of years to prepare. Surely we can find a solution. But not everyone agreed. Some species began talking about hiding. Others discussed abandoning the galaxy entirely. Panic spread like wildfire. Humanity's response was different. Admiral Minho called a meeting of Earth's military and scientific leaders. We have 8,000 years, maybe less. That sounds like a long time, but it's not. We need to start preparing now. Preparing how? Someone asked. We don't even know what we're preparing for. Then we find out, Minho said simply. We explore. We learn. We build. That's what humans do. Dr. Day began studying every piece of architect technology he could access. Engineer Jinwoo started designing defensive systems based on theoretical weapons. Captain Taeyang volunteered to lead expeditions into deep space. searching for more information about the collectors. But it was Dr. Hana who made the most important discovery. She was studying biological samples from the dead zones when she noticed something strange. The aliens who had lived there were all remarkably similar despite being from different locations. Similar technology levels, similar social structures, similar evolutionary paths. They were all conventional, she realized. Every civilization the collectors destroyed followed predictable development patterns. They advanced steadily, built standard technology, created stable societies. So? Her assistant asked. So humans don't do that, Hana said, excitement building. We're unpredictable. We advance in bursts. We invent things out of order. We solve problems in ways that make no sense to others. What if that's our advantage? What if the collectors can't predict us because we don't follow patterns? She presented her theory to the council. The response was mixed. Some saw hope. Others saw desperate wishful thinking. You're suggesting humans are different enough to matter against a force that has harvested hundreds of galaxies? Thexarn asked skeptically. I'm suggesting that being different is exactly what matters, Hana replied. The architects tried to fight the collectors by becoming stronger in conventional ways. They failed before they could try. Maybe the solution isn't to be stronger in the same way. Maybe it's to be different in ways the collectors don't expect. Yuna stood up. Whether Dr. Hana is right or not, we have to try. The architects feared humanity because we don't accept limitations. Now we face a real threat, not an imagined one. This is our chance to prove that human determination isn't just dangerous, it's valuable. The debate continued for weeks, but slowly a consensus emerged. The galaxy would prepare for the collectors, and humanity would be at the forefront of that preparation, not because they were strongest or smartest, but because they were the only species that saw an impossible challenge and got excited rather than afraid. 8,000 years, Taeyang said to his crew as they prepared for another exploration mission. Most species see that as a countdown to doom. We see it as 8,000 years to figure out how to win. Commander Gina smiled. That's very human of us. Exactly, Taeyang replied. And maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs. As the Horizon's Promise launched into unknown space, humanity's real work began. Not just surviving in the galaxy, but preparing to defend it. The architects had feared humans would become a threat to galactic peace. Instead, humans might become its salvation. But first, they had to learn everything they could about an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than any that currently existed, and they had to do it, while still learning to coexist with aliens who were only just beginning to trust them. 5 years passed since humanity learned about the collectors. In that time, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had imagined. Ambassador Yuna walked through the halls of the new Galactic Defense Initiative headquarters, a massive station built jointly by humans and 17 alien species. The walls displayed star charts marking exploration routes, defensive positions, and research stations. It was impressive, but Yuna knew they were still just beginning. She found Admiral Minho in the command center, reviewing reports from deep space expeditions. He had aged in 5 years, his hair showing more gray, but his eyes remained sharp and determined. How many missions are currently active? Yuna asked. 43 exploration teams, 15 research stations, and 8 defensive fleet positions, Minho replied. Captain Taeyang is leading the furthest expedition. They're 6,000 light-years beyond our previous range. Any new information about the collectors? Some, not enough. Minho pulled up a holographic display. We found evidence of their previous harvests in 3 galaxies. The pattern is consistent. They arrive, identify the most advanced civilization, harvest everything, and leave. The timeline suggests they move methodically, taking anywhere from 100 to 500 years to fully harvest a galaxy. That's not as much time as we hoped, Yuna said quietly. No, but it's what we have, and humans have done more with less. In another part of the station, Dr. Day worked in a laboratory filled with architect technology. He had assembled a team of researchers from a dozen species, all working together to understand the ancient civilization's final projects. What they had discovered was remarkable. Before their civil war, the architects had been developing weapons and defenses specifically designed to fight the collectors. They never finished, but they left behind blueprints, theories, and partially completed prototypes. The problem, Day explained to his team, is that the architects were thinking like architects. They tried to build bigger, stronger, more advanced versions of conventional weapons. It didn't work during testing. So what do we do differently? Asked a young researcher named Soman. We think like humans, Day said with a slight smile. We look for unconventional solutions. The collectors expect advanced civilizations to fight in certain ways. Let's not fight that way. Engineer Jinwoo had taken this philosophy to heart. His team was developing defensive systems that made conventional military strategists uncomfortable. Weapons that used quantum uncertainty as a feature, not a bug. Shields that adapted and learned. Drones that operated on insect swarm principles rather than programmed tactics. Military doctrine says weapons should be predictable to your own forces, Jinwoo explained to a skeptical council observer. But that predictability is what makes them vulnerable to an enemy that can analyze patterns. Our weapons are semi-random, adapting in real time. Yes, it makes them harder for us to control, but it makes them nearly impossible for an enemy to predict. That sounds dangerous, the observer said. All weapons are dangerous, Jinwoo replied. Ours are just dangerous in ways the collectors won't expect. Meanwhile, Dr. Hana had established the first interspecies research institute on a world called Harmony. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study together, sharing knowledge and perspectives. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. A Valerian scientist discovered a new propulsion theory after discussing human philosophy with a visiting professor. An Earth mathematician solved a century-old alien physics problem by applying game theory. Knowledge that had seemed impossible to attain suddenly became accessible when different minds approached it from different angles. This is what the architects missed, Hana told Yuna during one of her visits. They were so advanced, but they were alone in their advancement. They never learned to collaborate with species who thought differently. We're doing what they couldn't, but not everything was smooth. Integration brought conflicts. Human colonists on a shared world clashed with locals over resource management. Alien traders felt cheated by human negotiation tactics they considered aggressive. Cultural misunderstandings led to diplomatic incidents. Ambassador Quan spent most of his time resolving these issues. He had become an expert in finding middle ground between wildly different worldviews. His secret, he often said, was simple. Treat every conflict like a puzzle to solve rather than a battle to win. One memorable incident involved human miners and a crystalline species who both claimed rights to an asteroid field. The dispute had escalated to threats of violence. Quan visited both groups separately. To the humans, he said, "You're thinking of this as a zero-sum game. But that's not the only option." To the crystalline beings, he explained, "Humans are competitive by nature, but they're also creative problem solvers. Challenge them to find a solution that benefits both sides." Within a week, the two groups had developed a joint mining operation that was more efficient than either could have managed alone. The humans provided engineering expertise. The crystalline beings provided processing capabilities. Everyone profited more than they would have alone. "That's what I mean about humans being different," Quan told Yuna later. "We're competitive, yes, but we're also collaborative when we see mutual benefit. Most species are one or the other. We're both." Captain Taeyang's exploration mission reached a remarkable discovery 6,000 light-years from home. His ship detected artificial structures in intergalactic space, ancient beyond calculation. As they approached, a message played in a language the translation systems barely recognized. It was from the architects, a final message left for whoever found it. "If you are hearing this, our civilization has fallen. We failed to stop the collectors. We failed to stop ourselves. Our fear made us weak, but perhaps you can succeed where we failed. The collectors are not truly intelligent," the message explained. "They are more like sophisticated algorithms, following patterns perfected over millions of years. They can adapt to technological threats, but they cannot understand creativity, irrationality, or unpredictability. They harvest civilizations that grow in logical, predictable ways. Perhaps a civilization that grows differently might survive." Taeyang transmitted this information immediately. It confirmed Dr. Hana's theory and validated the unconventional approaches humanity had been developing. Back on Earth, the government debated what this meant for their approach. Some wanted to double down on unpredictability. Others worried that relying on chaos was not a real strategy. It was an unexpected voice that settled the debate. Warlord Krex, the Draxian leader who had once attacked humanity, now spoke as their ally. "I fought humans," he reminded the council. "I lost because I expected them to fight logically. They fought creatively. The collectors will make the same mistake if we let them. Humanity's chaos is our advantage. The debate ended. The galaxy would prepare for the collectors by embracing the human approach. Adaptability over strength, creativity over predictability, collaboration over isolation. 3 more years passed. Captain Taeyang was promoted to admiral, leading a joint fleet of ships from 20 species. Dr. Day became director of advanced research, coordinating projects across multiple worlds. Hana's institute trained a generation of scientists who thought across species boundaries. Jinwu's unconventional weapons became the standard for galactic defense. And Yuna, the ambassador who had first stepped into an alien world with only hope and determination, became co-premier of the Galactic Council alongside Veltaris. The crystalline being had become her closest friend and strongest supporter. Who would have thought, Veltaris said during a quiet moment, that the species we feared most would become the one we trust most? Fear and trust aren't that different, Yuna replied. Both come from recognizing someone's power. The difference is whether you believe they'll use it against you or with you. Then the long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's plan suddenly real. A massive energy signature at the galactic rim, unlike anything natural. The collectors had arrived early, not in 8,000 years, but now, the galaxy mobilized. Every defensive fleet moved to position. Every weapon system activated. Every research station went into emergency protocols. And Admiral Taeyang's fleet, the tip of the defensive spear, moved toward the approaching threat. All ships, this is Admiral Taeyang, he broadcast to his mixed-species fleet. We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. The collectors expect us to fight like every other civilization they've harvested. Let's disappoint them. On the flagship bridge, Commander Gina coordinated with tactical officers from 6 different species. Lieutenant Bora led fighter squadrons that combined human pilots with alien wingmates, who had learned to appreciate creative flying. Dr. Day monitored the unconventional weapon systems, ready to deploy technology that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. As the first collector vessels became visible, massive constructs that dwarfed any ship the galaxy had built, Yuna stood in the council chamber. Every screen showed the approaching battle. Every counselor waited to see if their preparations would be enough. The architects feared humans would threaten galactic peace. Yuna said quietly, "They were so worried about what we might become that they imprisoned us for 50,000 years. They never imagined we might become their salvation."